Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 18th episode of Don't Forget the Popcorn. Today, we will be discussing the best Westerns ever made. The Western genre is one of my personal favorites, and my list is based on my opinion and my personal favorites. A Western film, typically set in Old West America between the late 18th century and the late 19th century, they tell stories of frontier life, the life of outlaws, cowboys, and settlers. Westerns typically are tales of justice, freedom, manifest destiny, individualism, and the settling of the United States. There's also the revisionist Westerns, or the post classical era of the traditional Western. These stories were more character driven to present a less simple view of Western life. Now that we got an idea of what we were talking about, let's get into the best Westerns ever made. Number 10. Unforgiven, 1992, directed by Clint Eastwood. Unforgiven tells the story of an aged cowboy who has changed his life for the better, who gets back into his old ways for a quick payday after being hired to kill a group of men by prostitutes. This movie is a gritty story of revenge and justice. It carries some of those strong Western themes and is brilliantly directed by Clint Eastwood while also giving a great performance. We also get some timeless performances from Gene Hackman and Morgan Freeman. Number 9. McCabe and Miss Miller, 1971, directed by Robert Altman. McCabe and Miss Miller is a revisionist Western that tells the story of a gambler who takes over a small town in 1902 Washington State. The town thrives, and he and a British prostitute set a successful brothel and bathhouse. As the more money come in, the threats of competition come to take over McCabe's business. This movie is amazing and a very different Western than we are used to. Director Robert Altman called this an anti-Western, as its themes are different and don't quite glorify the brutal nature of traditional Western life. Warren Beatty gives a brilliant performance as McCabe and gives us a different kind of cowboy to root for, and Miss Miller is a smooth foxen businesswoman that delivers her performance with elegance and grace. Number 8. The Wild Bunch, 1969, directed by Sam Peckinpah. This film tells the story of a gang of Asian outlaws on the Mexican border in 1913. They are trying to adapt to the new life around them and rapidly changing world while trying to survive by any means necessary. This movie is brutally graphic and hilarious all at the same time. William Holden as Pike delivers a great performance leading these men while they question him and his motives throughout. This movie is just a good bang-em-up time with tons of violent shootouts and crimes being committed throughout. This is one of those movies you watch to have a fun time when you're feeling like an outlaw. Number 7. Hell or High Water, 2016, directed by David Mackenzie. Hell or High Water is a story of two brothers out robbing banks that screwed them out of their mother's land as they prepare to buy it back from them with the money they stole. The aging and nearly retired Texas Ranger and his partner are hot on their trail. This neo-Western is easily one of the funniest and most stylistic Westerns we've ever had. It's got some of the best cinematography I've ever seen in a Western, and even though these guys are in pickup trucks and not horses, it still feels like the Wild West with all of the traditional Western themes in this modern Western classic. Chris Pine, Ben Foster, and Jeff Bridges bring their A game, and they're all at the top in this one. Number 6. The Shootist, 1976, directed by Don Segal. The first John Wayne movie on this list, and it won't be the last. The Shootist tells the story of an aging gunfighter, J.B. Brooks, who finds out he has cancer after arriving in Carson City. His reputation precedes him, and he is constantly tested and feared by the people around him as he forms a relationship with a woman he is lodging with as he fights his illness. This movie is just badass, and John Wayne is at the top of his game here in his last film role. A short and quick bang-em-up Western that is a lot of fun and heartfelt all at once, as you peel back the layers of the complicated J.B. Brooks. This has one of my favorite endings to a Western ever. Number 5. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969, directed by George Roy Hill. This movie tells the story of two best friends who are living on the run after committing a series of train robberies with Sundance's lover. This movie is a buddy western where we see one of the most interesting bromances on screen in this action packed and intense western. It is extremely funny and yet heart pounding as you travel with these guys as the law comes for them. Paul Newman and Robert Redford are at the top of their game, making this one of the most compelling and rewatchable westerns ever made. This is the western that got me into the genre. Number 4. Django Unchained, 2012, directed by Quentin Tarantino. I know a lot of people will be upset that this movie made the list, but it is one of the best written, directed, and acted westerns ever made. This tale of a slave who is on a journey to find his missing wife is one of the most unique takes on the genre and told a story that traditional westerns heavily avoided. Although a lot of westerns were set in the Civil War or had it in the backdrop, the treatment of blacks in those times is often avoided, and Tarantino dives right into it with this one. It is brutally violent, has heart-wrenching scenes, and can be an emotional watch, all while being possibly the funniest western ever made next to Blazing Saddles. Django is one of the most satisfying westerns I've ever seen and is a great film for someone just getting into the genre. Jamie Foxx, Christoph Waltz, Leonardo DiCaprio, and Sam Jackson give us some of the best western performances ever put to screen. Number 3. Rio Bravo, 1959, directed by Howard Hawks. Rio Bravo tells the story of a sheriff who arrests the brother of a wealthy rancher who has tons of connections and wants him out of jail. The sheriff only has a drunk, an old cripple, and a few other oddly placed friends down the road to help him with the battle against the well-connected rancher. This film was a blatant and direct response to High Noon. John Wayne felt that the message of High Noon was un-American, and the sheriff begging for help and ultimately being saved by his wife. In Rio Bravo, you get the opposite. The sheriff opposes help from anyone he doesn't see fit and doesn't want them in harm's way. High Noon, in my own personal opinion, isn't one of the best westerns. I can appreciate it for its influence early on, but overall, I found Rio Bravo to be far more entertaining and fun. High Noon tackles a great message of blacklisting and banding together, but entertainment value counts for a lot in a western, and in my opinion, I think Rio Bravo has much more of that. Chance, the Dude, Stumpy, Colorado, and Feathers are all great fun characters with very unique and likable personalities. John Wayne is yet again at the top of his game in this fun, clever, and action-packed western with a lot of good laughs along the way. Number 2. The Searchers, 1956, directed by John Ford. The Searchers tells the story of a Civil War vet and his adopted nephew who spends years looking for their abducted niece/sister. John Wayne is yet again playing a great character. He's a prejudiced man set in his ways and doesn't accept the fact that his adopted nephew is part Native American. As the two clash on this adventure movie, they both grow to love and respect each other, all while trying to accomplish this mission. The movie is everything you wanted. A movie that puts you right on the back of the horse and makes you feel like you're along for the ride as these two discuss and debate over things that we talk about still to this day. It's a film that is influential for good reason, and after the first viewing, you will understand why. This movie deals in so many themes that many of us struggle with today. The ending is possibly one of the best movie endings, with John Wayne standing on the porch in between the comfort of the house and the freedom of the land. Before we get into our number 1 pick, I have 5 honorable mentions in no particular order. The Treasure of Sierra Madre, No Country for Old Men, There Will Be Blood, Once Upon a Time in the West, and True Grit 2010. Now, guys, for our number 1 pick, it may sound cliche, but you could probably guess what it is. Number 1, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, 1966, directed by Sergio Leone. This movie tells the story of 3 very unique men who are all looking for the same treasure buried in a cemetery. These 3 unique personalities all meet and the hunt and chase for the gold and glory begin. This movie is one of the best movies ever made. I know a lot of deep cinephiles discredit this film when it comes to westerns and say it's overrated, but I 100% disagree. This movie is gritty, brutal, fun, and packed with style and action. The good, Clint Eastwood plays the smooth, stoic, and very well dressed anti hero whose intelligence is to be feared more than his gun. The bad, played by Lee Van Cleef, is a mean and greedy man who will do anything to get what he wants. The ugly, played by Eli Wallach, Tuco, violent and disgusting, yet extremely smart and resilient, makes for one of the funniest and memorable characters you've ever seen in a movie. The performances, the direction, and this simple yet interesting story is brilliantly played out in this 3-hour showdown of cowboy madness. This movie is one of the best movie endings ever, which is unpredictable on the first viewing, while also delivering everything you would want in it. The score of this film is so iconic that if you've never even seen it before, you've heard the score. This film has influenced countless filmmakers and is still being studied and talked about today. This movie proved that other countries were just as capable of making a great Western as America was. Guys, I hope you enjoyed my list. Make sure you tell me your favorite Westerns down in the comments below. Guys, do me a huge favor. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget the popcorn.